You know that sensation you get when scrolling? When you suddenly get that sinking feeling in your stomach? Someone your age just bought their dream house. Another person is at a beach in Bali, while you're still in your same apartment. And your friend just got promoted, again. You're not imagining it. Every time you scroll, someone looks happier, more successful, more loved, and somehow more put together than you. And here's what makes it worse. You know comparison is pointless. You understand logically that social media is a highlight reel and doesn't show the full picture. But you still feel that gut punch of inadequacy every single time. In this video, we're going to talk about why you're prone to comparing yourself with others, why comparison hits so much harder online, and why it keeps happening even when you're self-aware. We'll examine what's really going on beneath the surface and offer you practical, emotionally intelligent techniques that will help you work with your psychology, not against it. Because this isn't about jealousy, insecurity, or weakness. It's about how the digital world quietly rewires the way we measure ourselves, often without us noticing. Let's start with what's actually happening when you compare yourself online. Our brains are already hardwired to compare ourselves with others, and it goes back to basic survival psychology. Long before social media, our minds used social comparison as a way to gauge safety, belonging, and status within a group, because fitting in often meant protection, cooperation, and resources. We naturally look around to understand where we fit, how we're doing, and what's expected of us. But that system evolved for small familiar circles, repeated interactions, and a shared reality. Today, that same radar is being fed thousands of carefully edited moments from people you've never even met. Your brain doesn't register them as content, it registers them as peers. And when all it sees are promotions, perfect relationships, and constant momentum, it reacts as if something is wrong, as if everyone else is moving ahead while you're not. Everyone's life seems more exciting and fulfilling than yours. In everyday life, comparison has limits. When you interact with people in person, you get the full context. You notice their tone, the challenges they're facing, the progress they're making, and the parts of their life they're still working through. But online, that context disappears. When you see someone's post about their promotion, their vacation, their relationship, you're getting a small percentage of their actual reality. You don't see the debt they're in, the relationship problems, the stress they're experiencing at work. Your brain doesn't naturally account for missing information. It creates a complete picture from incomplete data. You're not comparing your life to someone else's life. You're comparing your internal reality to someone else's highlighted moments, and your mind fills in the missing gaps automatically. What you see feels complete, even though it isn't. Here's what's actually happening. When you see someone else's post, your mind doesn't just register information, it creates a story about how fulfilled they must be, how confident they must feel, how far ahead they are, how effortlessly they seem to be moving, how together their life looks. And suddenly, without meaning to, your mind places you as the contrast against a story that may not even be true. Because the brain is wired to make meaning from incomplete information, every comparison becomes evidence to support the idea that everyone is doing better than you. And once your brain adopts that story, it starts looking for proof everywhere. This isn't comparison as logic, it's comparison as emotion. And this is where most people get confused. Knowing that social media is curated doesn't stop comparison, because comparison doesn't happen at the level of belief. It happens at the level of identity before you can think your way out of it. Your nervous system reacts before your rational mind catches up. So even emotionally intelligent, reflective people can feel suddenly behind, slightly diminished, or quietly unsettled. Not because they believe the illusion, but because the emotional signal has already landed. And here's the question everyone gets wrong. How do I stop comparing myself? How do I stop comparing myself is the wrong question, because you really can't entirely stop. Since comparison is hardwired in you, that question often leads to self-judgment. Let's talk about why the usual advice doesn't work. You may have already tried some of these suggestions. First off, just be grateful for what you have. Okay, but here's the thing. You can be genuinely grateful for your life and still feel the sting of comparison. These aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, trying to force gratitude when you're feeling inadequate often just adds shame on top of comparison. And now you feel bad about feeling bad. Gratitude is powerful, but it's not a comparison antidote. It's a practice that works when you're in the right state, not when you're in a comparison spiral. Next recommendation, stop using social media. That's like saying, stop breathing polluted air when you live in a city. For most people, social media is tied to their work, their relationships, their communities. Going completely off-grid isn't realistic, and it doesn't solve the underlying problem. It just removes one trigger. Plus, even if you quit social media entirely, you'd still compare yourself to your coworkers, your neighbors, people at the gym. The platform isn't the problem. Your relationship with comparison is. And then there is always the comment, don't forget it's just their highlight reel. You already know this. Everyone knows this. And yet, it doesn't change how you feel, does it? That's because intellectual understanding and emotional regulation are two completely different systems in your brain. Knowing something logically doesn't automatically change your emotional response. You need tools that work where comparison actually happens, at the emotional level. So if the typical advice doesn't work, what does? Emotional intelligence asks a different question. Instead of, how can I stop comparing myself with others, it asks, what emotion did this activate, and what is this emotion asking for? Because comparison isn't the root problem, it's the signal. Often, what's really happening is a need for reassurance, a sense of disconnection, a moment of uncertainty about direction, or a quiet mismatch between your values and what you're consuming. The comparison itself is just the surface reaction. When you name the emotion underneath it, whether it's envy, longing, self-doubt, or loneliness, the comparison framework starts to dissipate. Awareness doesn't eliminate the feeling, it gives you choice. And choice is what breaks compulsive patterns. When you notice yourself falling into the comparison trap, you don't need to think differently right away. You need to regulate first. One helpful place to start is pausing the narrative, not the emotion. Your mind wants to finish the story that they're ahead, you're behind. You should be doing more. Instead of arguing with that story, pause it. You can simply remind yourself, this is incomplete information. That small shift alone is powerful and can keep your nervous system from escalating. Comparison isn't your enemy. Emotionally intelligent people strive to reframe comparison as information. Many people experience comparison as a vague, uncomfortable feeling like, I feel bad. But emotional intelligence requires specificity. You need to know exactly what you're feeling and why. Next time you feel that comparison twinge, stop and ask yourself these 3 questions. Question 1. What specifically am I comparing? Not just thinking they're doing better than me. Get specific. Are you comparing others' income, career progress, their relationships, or lifestyle? Question 2. What does this comparison reveal about what I truly value? This is the deeper layer. If you're comparing income, maybe what you actually value is security or financial freedom. If you're comparing someone's relationship, maybe what you actually value is intimacy or being loved and cherished. Question 3. Is this comparison showing me something I genuinely want or something I'm supposed to want? Sometimes comparison reveals a genuine desire, something you actually want for your life. But often, it may reveal borrowed desires, things you think you should want because society says they matter. But these desires may not actually align with what fulfills you. If you can distinguish between these, you've just saved yourself years of chasing things that were never going to make you happy anyway. So when you can decode its message clearly, comparison becomes less of a foe and more of a friend pointing you toward what matters. Once you know what you're actually comparing and why, you can reframe the comparison from threat to information. Here's the protocol. Step 1. Name the emotion without judgment. I'm feeling inadequate right now. I'm feeling envious. I'm feeling left behind. Don't argue with it. Don't shame yourself for it. Just name it. This simple act of labeling emotions reduces their intensity. It's a psychological technique called affect labeling, which research shows can calm the part of your brain that processes strong emotions and detects threats. Step 2. Separate what you see from the story you're telling yourself. You see a friend posting about their promotion. Your story becomes, everyone's succeeding except me. I'm falling behind. I'm not good enough. Your brain will try to blur these together. Your job is to separate them. The observation is neutral, the story is optional, but your brain won't tell you that unless you intervene. Step 3. Ask yourself, is this comparison showing me something I genuinely want? And if so, what's one small action I can take toward it? Notice just one small action, not a complete life overhaul. One action. Send one email. Research one option. Just take one step. That's it. This transforms comparison from a paralyzing emotion into directional energy. Okay, so we can't eliminate comparison, but we can absolutely change our environment to reduce unnecessary exposure. Think of this like an information diet. The healthier your intake, the healthier your emotional world becomes. You wouldn't eat junk food all day and then wonder why you feel terrible. Same principle applies to your information diet. If certain content consistently leaves you feeling diminished, pressured, or unsettled, that isn't personal failure, it's data. First, go through who you follow online. For each account, ask, after I see their content, do I typically feel inspired and energized, or depleted and inadequate? Be honest. Some accounts consistently make you feel worse. It doesn't mean those people are to blame, just that their content isn't right for you right now. Second, unfollow, mute, or limit accounts that consistently trigger unhelpful comparison. Follow more accounts that show the process, not just the outcome. The struggle, not just the success. The reality, not just the highlight reel. Third and final step, set actual limits to protect your emotional state, like no social media until after breakfast, no scrolling in bed, no checking when you're already feeling vulnerable. Your emotional well-being is affected by what you expose yourself to. That's not weakness. That's being human. Protect your internal state. Another important question you might want to ask as you delve deeper in the comparison trap is, what am I measuring my worth against? For example, if every comparison makes you feel behind, ask, behind according to whose timeline? Yours, or someone else's perceived highlight reel? The goal isn't to stop comparison entirely, it's to catch it early enough that it no longer gets to decide who you are. Instead of letting comparison online collapse your confidence and self-worth, remember to ask, what is this comparison revealing without letting it define me? Because as long as your self-worth is primarily determined by external metrics, like how much you achieve, how you look, what others think, it will be harder to loosen comparison's power over you. Here's the paradox. The less you need external validation, the more freely you can pursue your personal goals and ambitions, because you're not chasing them from a place of inadequacy, but from a place of authentic desire. EI at the deepest level means developing a sense of self that's rooted in your values, your growth, and your character, things that are within your control and that can't be taken away by someone's Instagram post. If you'd like to keep exploring your own EI in today's modern world, consider subscribing to the EI Code. We don't just decode behavior, we decode the emotions behind it, so you can live your best life with greater awareness, depth, and peace. That's emotional intelligence, and it starts with you. If you want to go deeper or apply this in your own life, I've linked a few helpful resources related to this topic in the description below. There's also another video on your screen that looks at a different emotional challenge shaped by our digital world.